You guys probably, if you guys have had friends that have been in the other power hour, you guys probably know I cannot feed you today. Licenses, I guess, have to be given or purchased or something in order to be able to feed people in a hotel. So I can't feed you the delicious eggs and the delicious pound of ground beef that I'm gonna make today. So if you guys are standing, if you guys could come on in, just for the sake of time. Again, we only have an hour for this, and I want to be able to get everybody to the main session for roundtable, so you guys get all the goods there as well. So, by show of hands, who here has the cookware at home? Awesome, that's fantastic. We had a DM from our division that's here at NET, just kind of learning, and he texts his wife after this first power hour. He goes, he's like, we need to buy pans. He's got 1 2-quart saucepan. That's all he got. And I was like, yes. All right. I sold somebody on pans. Now, by show of hands, who here that has them actually uses them at home? Okay. And if you're not raising your hand, that's okay. Now, who here that uses them feels super confident in using them? Okay. A few less hands. Okay, great. So today, guys, my couple of goals that I have is to just kind of be more informative on kind of the Cookware pots and pans in general. I have a couple of one-liners I'm going to be using. This is not necessarily a crazy, like, here's how to sell a bunch more cookware necessarily. This is more about like helping you guys pop the fear bubbles that you might already have about the cookware in general. Who here has ever sold a set of cookware and had a return? Okay, all of us, right? So over the last like 5 years, like I was talking a little bit about my talk last night, like the last couple of years has been super intentional with getting better at selling cookware. And that intentionality has come is so basic, but it's literally just using the pans more often at home. So I feel by the end of my conversation with the customer, I talk with Seth, like what we do is we just teach people how to use it until they're comfortable enough to break out their credit card and get the pots and pans, right? So if you have a process of selling something where by the end of the demonstration, they feel confident that they could do what you're talking about, you're just gonna automatically sell more pots and pans. Knives are really easy to sell because you cut leather and they're like, oh, I've used something like that before and I just cut leather and that's the craziest thing I've ever done in my life. So that's why they buy them. They're like, that's crazy. With the pots and pans, I'm a huge believer in visuals. So again, I use my phone all the time, right? To show people, myself and other examples of how the pots and pans work. So today, I'm gonna do some very basic stuff. I'm cooking on a stovetop that, again, I've used for the first time yesterday, for the first time. But today I'm gonna do 3 different things with eggs. I'm gonna do a scramble, I'm gonna do over easy, and then I'm also gonna do an omelet, okay? I'm also gonna make a pound of ground beef, and then I'm also gonna make some carrots and some broccoli. Unfortunately, again, if you guys are just popping in, I can't feed you. So unfortunately, that is what it is. So, so today I have 5 pieces of cookware in front of me. Essentially, I've got the 4-quart saucepan right here, and we're gonna do the vegetables first on this one. And then I'm gonna do eggs over here, and then we're gonna do ground beef in the middle. So my belief on cookware in general has a lot to do with if you teach a person how to use it, they'll feel comfortable in doing it. So who here knows the stigma behind stainless steel? What happens when people usually cook with it? It sticks, right? So I love analogies, and so when I am talking to my customers, I'm a big believer in using analogies to help them feel more comfortable and also twist their perspective, because 90% of the people that you talk to have not used stainless steel the correct way their whole life, and that's why they've struggled with cooking with stainless steel, ironically. So I love the analogy of barbecuing. So I ask my customers every single time, I'm like, hey, Mrs. Jones, and if Mr. Jones is there, it's always fun to ask as well. It's like, hey, would you ever take a cold steak or a room temperature steak and put it onto a cold grill? What do they always say? Never. Why would you do that? And I always ask the follow-up question of why would you not do that? What would happen? It would stick, it wouldn't sear, right? It would just be really, really annoying. It just wouldn't look good trying to peel it off. If you guys are just coming in, by the way, there are more chairs up here, so if you have to stand up, if you want to sit over here, you can. Right, so the point is, it's like, hey, how can you take a real life example that they're already familiar with, right? Seth just talked about power positioning and framing. If you can take an analogy that they're familiar with, I can't remember who used the shoes example yesterday, but all of a sudden this whole like concept of having all of these knives or all of these pots and pans or all of the accessories that we have. It's like, do I really need that many things? And all of a sudden you use it to shoes. They're like, oh, you're right. I do have 12 pairs of shoes, right? So it's the same thing with cooking with our pots and pans. So if they're not comfortable with cooking with stainless, it's just because they haven't been taught the proper way on how to cook with stainless, okay? So I'm a big believer, and there's a big component in just helping your customers understand that it's not rocket science. You're just cooking, right? That's all you're doing. It's really not crazy. It's just cut go, okay? So I use that analogy. I also use the analogy of pizza. I'm like, Mrs. Jones, you'd never put a cold pizza into a cold oven because you just would have no idea really how long it's supposed to take to cook the pizza, right? I'm all about efficiency, so I love to be able to just know that when I'm cooking a pound of ground beef in a couple minutes, from start to finish, from preheating the pan to being done with the pound of ground beef, it's gonna be under 10 minutes, right? And if it's 2 pounds of ground beef, I'm gonna be done in 13 minutes, right? I just know that, right? So one of my best lines that I did not use in the first session that I wanna share with you guys is, a lot of people think that fast food is fast until they get to the drive-thru. By the time you get through the drive-thru and back home, it takes 45 to 50 minutes just to get your fast food. The reason why a lot of people go out to eat is because their cookware is just inefficient, and it takes forever to cook the food that they want to cook. So I love that I can do 2 chicken breasts that are fat from Whole Foods in 20 minutes on my stovetop. I can do that because I have cookware that's awesome enough to be able to do that, okay? So who here has ever heard of the water test? Okay, so essentially what I joke with my customers is I'm like, essentially all you're looking for, Mrs. Jones, is before you put any butter or spray or oil into your pans, you just want to watch the water bounce. And I joke that it's bouncing for butter, right? And I do this with my customers every single time. And they're like, oh my God, you're such a nerd, right? So this pan, again, we're cooking at like 220 degrees, so that's a pretty low heat. So the vegetables, I'm never gonna go super high or even to medium on vegetables just because I like it to be, I would say low and slow with eggs and low and slow with cocoa, with vegetables as well, okay? Now, I'm gonna do some eggs too, just because. All right. Okay. So what's kind of cool about this thing is that it doesn't work unless you have the pan on it because it's an induction stovetop. I'm never cooking on an induction stovetop. So what's cool about this process, by the way, guys, is this is me cooking on a stovetop I've used twice ever in my life. So another thing I'm really big on is I'm really big on helping my customers understand that they're gonna screw up, okay? Your expectations and how you set expectations with customers 100% has to do with your retention rate on a person keeping their pots and pans. If they think that nothing sticks, nothing burns, and it's always gonna taste perfect, you're gonna have so many returns. So many returns. I got frustrated enough to the fact where I had so many returns where I just had like this PTSD of even selling pots and pans because I was like, dude, I sell them, they return them, right? And I kind of got just fed up with that because I just honestly didn't know how to use them that well myself, right? So I was saying yesterday, like this is completely outside of my comfort zone, right? Trying to cook 2 different things while also talking about pots and pans at the same time. Like I was joking yesterday, like I've never cooked food and also tried to sell pots and pans and teach people how to sell pots and pans at the same time, right? So you guys are all part of this journey today. It's gonna be great, right? But the reason I can talk about it so well while doing and multitasking so many different things right now is simply because I've talked about it the same way to same customers every single time for the last like 5 years, right? So expectations matter. So for my customers, what's great about them, now my customers know that if they get them, they're probably gonna burn something. And that's perfectly okay, right? That means that they're actually using them, right? And I joke, like an analogy that I love to use, guys, specifically with customers that that have nonstick pans. Ironically, half the time we buy nonstick pans, what still happens? Things still stick, right? So what's great about the Cutco pots and pans, what I tell my customers is there's a lot of peace of mind that what you put into the pan is what you get out of the pan, right? So if you didn't want to write that down, right? There's a lot of peace of mind of what you put into the pan is what you get out of the pans, okay? So I personally love butter and oil. So I specifically love butter. Butter, I think if you buy good butter, that's, again, actually good for you in moderation, just like anything. So we're gonna do some vegetables in this. I just love butter with my vegetables. So we're gonna smooth some butter around here. Throwing a paring knife through a 4-quart saucepan. All right. Shout out to Eileen. Can everybody give a high five or a handshake or a big round of applause for Eileen for cutting the vegetables? Oh, that worked out perfect. Oh my gosh. Just the perfect amount of vegetables, Eileen. You're the best. All right. So with this, can somebody set a timer for me for 15 minutes? That's what we're just not going to do for 15 minutes. We're not going to peek. That's all we're going to do. For not 15 minutes, we're just not going to look at it. All right, so with eggs. All right, the beginning part of my presentation, guys, I do eggs first. I show my customers how to make eggs. It's not that I'm literally physically like cooking eggs. Somebody asked yesterday, they're like, so do you like physically actually like do this like with customers? And I was like, absolutely not. Because this, first off, would be obviously there's a little bit more cleanup that has to happen when you're actually cooking for somebody, okay? So I'm gonna do an omelet first, just because it's easy to do. Shout out to the Cookware mixer. Okay, so I know it's gonna be super hard for you guys to see from your guys' angle, but what you're literally looking for is you're literally looking for water to do a dance for you, okay? I'll show you guys on my phone, right? It's kind of hard to see right now, but the water is kind of bouncing around the pan without any problem at all, right? Now that pan is actually probably a little bit too hot right now, right? And how I know that is the water is literally just staying there forever. It just doesn't go away. It's just bouncing, 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 bouncing. All right, so I'm just gonna give this a second. If you ever feel like your pan is too hot, by the way, this is just good for you guys to know too. You don't have to like take it off the burner for like 45 seconds. I usually just take it for like 10, 15 seconds. Just let it cool down, just get it out the heat. It does hold temperature for a really long time. Another good way to know if your pan is too hot, again, unfortunately I don't actually have a butter knife today. Oh, it's perfect. Is if your butter immediately starts to burn. We're just gonna throw all the butter in there because we gotta get rid of this butter, right, Eileen? All right, so put it around the pan, coat it around. There's so much butter in there. This would taste so good. All right, so again, something that I also think this is a lesson for your guys as customers. It's also a great lesson for you guys as well. Your cookware is always going to be giving you feedback. Okay, so what I mean by that is if things are sticking. Okay, if things are sticking, you're not making the pan hot enough. And if things are burning, your pan is too hot. So I tell that to my customers. Like, the great thing is, Mrs. Jones, your cookware is always going to be giving you feedback for what's going on in your pans, okay? Always. Now, when it comes to doing a scramble, what I like about scrambled eggs specifically is scrambled eggs, an omelet that I'm gonna do with this one. I'm a big believer is when you put whatever you're putting down, it could be oil, it could be butter, specifically with butter and eggs, I think butter is the best adhesive that you can use, just because of flavor mainly, but also B, just because I really do think it is the best like non-stick type of ingredient for your guys' eggs to like have things stick and burn less often. But when you put it down, you let the butter sit for 5-10 seconds, as I did today. Kind of put it in the pan, let it do its thing, right? So what I do with an omelet is I kind of, after about 30-45 seconds, I'll kind of hold it a little bit and then kind of let the egg that isn't actually being cooked cook a little bit, all right? And then we just wait, just chilling, okay? So now when we do this one, we're gonna do a scramble with this one, and then we're gonna do over easy at the end. All right. All right. Now, a couple things. While you're teaching your customers how to use them, okay, you're going to see a couple things on this cookware sheet, okay? Keep it simple, stupid, okay? I think the biggest problem with Cutco pots and pans is one of the biggest struggles reps struggle with is we're trying to sell Cutco pots and pans all about the health. Health is great. There's a lot of, obviously, benefits to having our pots and pans health-wise, 100%. just know, guys, 90% of your customers are not going to buy Cutco pots and pans because they're excited about waterless or low moisture cookware. It's a cherry on top is how I view it, okay? The reason why people buy Cutco knives is because they buy them once, they never have to replace them, and they're guaranteed forever. The pots and pans are the exact same thing, right? So keep it simple, stupid is literally, guys, you're selling people a Cutco pot and pan to help them understand that. I kind of joke, and I use this with my cookware pitch as well. I say, every 2 to 3 years, Mrs. Jones, Americans take $300 to $400, and they just light it on fire when they go out and buy a set of pots and pans, because they're like, this is it. This is the set of pans. I'm not going to have to buy them again. And then within 6 months, they start to flake or they start to break, and then they just get frustrated, but out of their ego, they're like, I still got to use them for another 2 to 3 years because I just spent $300 on these. Right? So the reason why people buy these pots and pans, by the way, as we are about to make an omelet, see if we can get this to go all the way around without it sticking. Let's figure it out. I mean, you can see it. I mean, it's just sliding around the pan. Crazy concept. But I thought stainless steel sticks. What the heck? Look at that. Look at that thing. Look at that thing wiggle and move. Holy crap. I didn't even turn this one on. That's ironic. I can't believe it's not butter, technically. That's awesome. All right, we're just going to flip that one on. Unfortunately, this guy has to go to the graveyard. This is the food graveyard today. There's that perfect, beautiful omelet. Push. Now, here's what's cool. I want to do this. I did not do this yesterday, okay? This is the cleanup. That's it. That's it. Take a little bit of water, a little bit of like soap and water, you're done. Easy money, right? That's it, okay? So, where was I? Keep it simple, stupid. So the reason why people buy Cutco pots and pans is essentially they know that once they buy them, they never replace them. So just like knives, you have to consistently reinforce this understanding of, hey, Mrs. Jones, you're not buying these to be the prettiest thing you've ever cooked on. You're not buying these things to just be like, just incredibly perfect forever. You're gonna scratch them, right? Josh Muller uses a line, these Cutco pots and pans are designed like construction equipment. They're designed to be used hard, not literally put away wet. Because that would be weird if you put Cutco pots and pans away wet, right? But then used again the next day, expected to be used and perform the exact same way the next day without having any type of problem, right? From one day to the next, or the next year, or the next decade, or the next 50 years of your life, or when you pass them down to your kids, they should be expected to work the exact same way. So the reason you're buying these, Mrs. Jones, because there's a peace of mind that you buy one more set of pots and pans and you never buy pots and pans again for the rest of your life until you want to buy them for your kids because you love them so much, right? So instilling that with them that if they keep it simple, they're going to love it, okay? So a couple little cookware talking points, okay? Pop fear bubbles early, okay? What we're talking about is having the same benefit of a nonstick pan without any of the toxic chemical coatings, right? At the end of the day, guys, when they go buy cheap Walmart, cheap Target, cheap pots and pans, we don't really know what's going on with the coating on those pans, right? There's no way to really know what's going on, right? So like I said earlier, there's a lot of peace of mind of what you put in is what you get out, right? I really do believe that your customers also feel that same way, but we keep getting sold this bill of goods that the granite core, the copper core, the titanium core, whatever the new thing is, every 2 or 3 years, those things keep changing, right? So you guys probably have heard of a PFOA, okay? PFOA is the only chemical that is actually banned by the FDA, okay? But there are hundreds of other chemicals that do the exact same thing as a PFOA that have just not yet been banned, right? So that's why we keep seeing these different types of chemicals that are put onto pots and pans. And at the end of the day, I try to remember that in the 1940s, when my great-great-grandma or great-grandma was cooking, right, she was not cooking on a nonstick surface. She was cooking either on cast iron or stainless steel. Right, so I tell my customers, like a Mrs. Jones, do you remember when you were over at your grandma's house or over at your mom's house way back, right, when you were growing up, 7, 6, 8 years old, and you remember seeing these big, huge stainless steel pots and pans? They're like, uh-huh. I was like, more than likely, it was probably this type of cookware, right, because that was the thing to buy in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's what people purchased. That's what they bought. They didn't buy nonstick because nonstick didn't exist, right? So when you're popping fear bubbles early, it's all about, hey, how can I show you that you can use it? And once they get bought in on, hey, I can do what that kid's doing with this egg. He can make an egg, I can make an egg, right? If he can do it, I can do it. I really truly believe that people are going to be open to everything else that you have to say, right? Specifically with the pots and pans that have lids on them, which we'll get to in a second. All right, teach through examples, okay? There's a couple things that I feel like you should have videos of, specifically when you're talking about pots and pans, okay? If you have not already created some type of, it's crazy how that just goes from hot and then all of a sudden it doesn't. That's wild.
What number are you putting it in?
This is at 240 right now. Oops. Oh, there we go. Changes on you just like that.
Do you have the nonstick at home?
I do not have the nonstick at home. It's all about personal preference. I just use the stainless, and it's just because I feel like I know how to use it, so I'm comfortable with it. Okay, so eggs, you should have videos of that. You should have a protein, chicken, or steak example. And then you should also have an example of a burnt pan. Okay? So if you do not have a folder, there we go. If you do not have a folder that has, I think I already put, yeah, I did, thank you. Thank you, you're the best. If you do not have a folder of Cookware, you should have a folder of Cookware, okay? So what I do on my phone, it is right here. I open up my Photos app, I go to my albums, ironically on the Cookware thing. Second one is Cookware, right? And I have now hundreds of examples. Hundreds of examples, right? Now, your circle of influence matters. So I'd recommend, if your circle of influence is not cooking with Cookware pots and pans right now, you should start cooking with the Cookware pots and pans with your circle. And start sending each other your videos of what's going on when you're cooking with them. I can hear the vegetables. Okay, who here has ever heard of the vapor seal? All right. This is a real thing, right? So again, we're still cooking. There's a lot of vegetables, so that vapor seal's still forming. Where are we at on that timer, by the way? 3.5 minutes. Probably need a little bit more. Cooking with a new pan for the first time. We're gonna go up to 220. Okay, where was I? Videos, thank you. So with videos, I think the importance of teaching through videos is really easy, right? Has anybody ever actually sat through like a live cookware demonstration at like the pots and pans? Has anybody ever sat through one? A couple people, great. Again, what they're doing, right, and the reason why they sell so much why they sell so much cookware is because they're teaching and they're showing through examples, right? You guys also have the ability to do that. We just don't have to cook to do it. So it's funny, we have a very good friend of ours. This is so funny. We have a good friend of ours, his name is Matt McCartney, and he sells pots and pans full time. It's like it's perfect, and then it's not. It's interesting how that works with induction. But anyway, here we are. We're just living and learning right now. He always jokes with us. He's like, I have no idea how you guys sell much pots and pans. Like, you guys aren't even cooking anything. And we're like, yeah, we just use videos. And we show people how not complicated it is. And then, ironically, you come over and bring food to feed us, and then we just feed our customers. And they're like, wow, this stuff tastes great. And we're like, yeah, it's basically the same thing. It's right around the corner. He's on our salary, don't worry, right? So all jokes aside, we just give him a hard time for it. All right, I'm just going to do this, and I'm actually going to give you an example of something probably sticking. This is going to be great. So I want you to notice. Do you guys notice how that did not make a sound? Okay, this pan is not hot enough. We're going to make eggs anyway, just to show customers that it's not a big deal. Okay, so we're going to make this go all the way around the pan. So with this example, this is totally going to stick. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Okay. Because this one took so long, we're going to put this one on right now. Okay. Here we go. It's gonna stick. Maybe it won't. Who knows? Yeah, it didn't sizzle. So if it doesn't sizzle, I can guarantee you this is going to stick. I can see into the future. It's going to be great. All right? And it's important, actually, by the way, guys, for you to F up. It's okay for you guys to screw up. It's okay for you guys to make eggs, for it to not go that well. It's actually a really good thing. Because you can also tell and temper your customers' expectations that it's all right to screw up with the pots and pans. You're gonna have things burn, you're gonna have things stick, and it's not the end of the world. Okay, one of my other favorite lines that I like to use is for customers that do have nonstick pans, or they are struggling with their pans that they already have. What's great about our Cutco pots and pans, Mrs. Jones, is that if anything does burn or stick, the great thing about our pots and pans is you don't have to let them soak for 3 hours. The great thing about these is that you can clean them in 2 minutes, right? Or 5 minutes, depending on how bad you do something. Okay, so for example, we talk about the burnt pan, right? Let's start these really quick. Don't let me forget burnt pan. Oh, yeah. Oh, that deliciousness. Yeah, they're probably gonna need some more minutes. But that's all right. Whoever had that timer, do me a favor, just put it to another 10 minutes. It doesn't really matter how they taste, because we can't taste them. Anyway, burnt pan. Okay, so I want to give you guys the example that I use for my burnt pan. So shout out to my guy, Brian Carter. He has a fantastic video where he has a pan that looks like this. It is awful. Okay, it is just a terrible burnt leaf, terrible just bacon, just torched, right? Just absolutely godforsaken torched. Now here's what's great. I show my customers this and I pause this on this video and I go, Mrs. Jones, does this pan look familiar? And they're like, oh yeah, I've been there. So unfortunately, with most pots and pans, you have to let it soak for whatever, 2, 3, 4 hours before you can clean it, because if you use any abrasive on a non-stick, right, then you just kind of have to toss the pan. What's great about this is my buddy here, he's gonna take water. Another great line for you guys to use is let the water do the work for you, okay? I hate cleaning dishes, so I let the water do the work for me. So my buddy puts some water into this pan, and after about 5 minutes, he's gonna take this little fancy-dancy spatula, and it's just gonna scrape right off. Now, I always give Brian a hard time. I'm like, I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting bacon grease down your sink. It's his kitchen, not mine though, right? And then it's a perfectly great pan. And I would tell my customers, Brian bought that pan, he said, back in like 2007. So that's a pan at that point in time when he made the video, which is give or take about, I think 4 years ago. It's a pan that 4 years ago he made that, and it still looks great after that amount of time, right? Now, who here, oh yeah, there we go, we got a little bit of stickage. Not actually that bad. It's okay though, we're gonna just send it. Oh yeah, there's definitely some sticking. Now here's what's interesting, guys. This amount of sticking, I don't know if you guys can see that, right? It's really like, that's basically what people get when they're cooking with a non-stick pan anyway. This is a little bit, gonna be a little bit burnt and a little bit sticky. But again, the cleanup on this is literally a little bit of water. That's all it is. And I'm gonna use that same towel once these are actually quote unquote done.
Is Brian using cold water on that, or did he put it on the stove?
Good question. He's asking if he put cold water or hot water on there. It's your call, by the way. Again, they're not indestructible, so Cutco pots and pans, they can warp, right? So just like in the cookware guide, it does not recommend that you guys take cold water and put it into a cold pan. So when I clean my pans out, I crank mine up to high heat for my water temperature, and I usually let the pan cool for 30 seconds before I throw some water in there, if I can. You don't have to do that. I just think that if you put water into the pan pretty much immediately after the fact, it is gonna release almost all of those foods right off the pan pretty much within a minute, right? That's all it really takes, right? All right, so this is a scramble this is what the pan's gonna look like. I'll dump out, oh Jesus. Here we go. Again, they kind of still, they get a little stuck. That's all right. So here's what's interesting though, right? Your customers have had pans like this that look like this before. That's perfectly fine, okay? We've already told them that it's okay for that to happen. So I take a little bit of water again. We'll let this cool down for maybe 5-10 seconds so I don't burn my hand off, right? But same thing. You can do this with a paper towel too. If I had a little bit of water, if we actually had a sink in here, right? A lot of this stuff would come off with just a little bit of soap and water. Right? If I actually had some water, that's the after effect, right? Some of those still come out, right? That's the after effect. Literally, if you guys had a sponge and some soapy water, all that would come off within 15 seconds, right? That's totally good, right? Now, once you get the hang of it, once you actually start cooking with the pots and pans more often and you're cooking with a stovetop that you're familiar with, right? That's probably not gonna happen that often, right? Like when I make omelets at home now, I can't even remember the last time I burnt an omelet, because the last time I burnt an omelet, I think it was because I like blacked out and forgot that I was cooking. And I'm not even joking about that. I have no idea. Don't ask questions you don't want answers to. We want the answers. All right. Now with ground beef, we're gonna do a little bit hotter. We're gonna go closer to 300 or so. All right, ground beef should take about 7 to 9 minutes, depending on what you're doing, okay? Now, another example of a burnt video that I use, I actually just started using this because I got it from a customer. Now, this is the coolest story ever. Okay, I had a customer that reached out to me, didn't need any of my help, by the way, none of it. Didn't ask me how to clean it, what the hell to do, and it's just because I tempered her expectations and taught her how to do it herself, right? So what I also love about selling cookware the right way, and you temper your customers' expectations, if they ever do screw up, they are more than capable of figuring out themselves. So this got sent to me. Tomato soup. Now she actually blacked out, just kidding. She just got super sick and she didn't have any sense of smell. So she actually forgot that she was cooking tomato soup, okay? So she sent me these videos. She's like, oh my God, Bert, you're not gonna believe what happened to me today, holy cow. And then she sends me a picture, and again, the live video, as you can see, she's boiling some water. She's boiling a little bit of water, right, because it was burnt all the way to the top. So she's like, I did the thing where I put the water in, and then I boiled it all out, scrubbed it out, and then I took that barkeeper's friend thing. It's crazy. Perfect. She did it. No help. No help at all, right? It was all her, right? So at the very end, I think towards here, it's setting proper expectations. On number 4, it says email customers with videos and simple reminders, okay? This actually is hilarious. Like you just put it on here and it looks like it's cooking, but it's not actually cooking. It's all good. It sizzles. This one doesn't. All right, it's all good. We're gonna be patient with these ones. So what I do at the end of each interaction is I set my customers' expectations the proper way, right? So I'm like, here's the deal, Mrs. Jones. When you buy pots and pans, there's a couple of rules, okay? And I get serious with them, okay? So I'm gonna send you an email, Mrs. Jones. I'm gonna send you an email that has a couple things that are super important. When you see that email, Mrs. Jones, the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna flag it. Now, if you forget what I just said, it's gonna be a reminder in the email for you to flag this, right? But the important thing about this email, Mrs. Jones, is there have been people, like myself, who have been using Cutco pots and pans for years that have figured out the right way to use the Cutco pots and pans and the wrong way to use the Cutco pots and pans. And I'm here to shorten your learning curve. Right, so all I want you to do is be able to jump right in and have a great experience with them. Now just know, have you ever bought a new faucet at home? Right, who here has ever bought a new faucet for their house? All right, the first couple weeks, it does take a little bit of time to figure out what's too hot and what's too cold, right? So Mrs. Jones, the first couple weeks that you're using these pots and pans at home, it's gonna be like buying a new faucet. You're gonna have to try to figure out what's too hot, what's too cold, right? I cook on a 3, on a scale of 2 to 6. On my stovetop, because 3 is actually a true medium heat. If I were to go up to 4, I'd be cooking on basically a high heat on my stovetop and everything would burn. So it's okay for you, Mrs. Jones, you're gonna get this fancy dancy cookware guide, and I've already mentioned this to my customers, and they're like, okay, cool. Don't throw it away. That's also a reminder that's in the email. So don't delete the email. At the very bottom of the email, Mrs. Jones, there are 3 videos. It is 20 minutes of your life. Do you do all the cooking? No, my husband does some too. Okay, you are gonna pop some popcorn and you're gonna sit your butt down on your couch and you're gonna sit down for 20 minutes and watch those videos with your husband, okay? If he is cooking, he should know exactly what's going on with these pots and pans, because most people, Mrs. Jones, their whole life, they have taken their nonstick pan, they have put it on the burner, put butter in the pan, turned it on, let the butter melt, and then they put their food in. The only thing that you will do different between these pans and the pans you've had for the last 20 years is you are gonna turn the pan on and make the pan hot before you put butter in. That's it, right? But those videos will re-explain those couple basic principles, and there's also a fantastic recipe that a buddy of mine does where he does 2 chicken breasts, carrots, and cinnamon apples in 18 minutes with no butter, no oil, no salt. And they're like, I'm like, but you gotta watch the video to figure what it is. They're like, oh my God, I'm gonna watch that tonight. Oh my God, so exciting. Right, so I create excitement around the videos, right? It's just Jason talking about the 3366 recipe, which is so basic, but it's so important for them to watch that because their spouse that's not there, or even if they are there that was checked out the whole damn time, right, is actually gonna be able to see, hey, this is what we have to do to be able to properly use them, okay? So setting proper expectations matters. Ha ha! There we go, all right. So are those some butter in here now? I just had to turn it up to 260. That's all I had to do. All right, perfect. Still not technically hot enough. It's kind of hot, but it's whatever. We're dealing with it. Just want to be able to show you guys that you guys can do this. Usually it does not take 17 minutes to heat up a 12-inch fry pan, especially if you guys are cooking with gas or electric at home. I do think that induction stovetops are actually fantastic if you're cooking on an actual induction, not like this portable thing that we're doing today. All right, now the great thing about ground beef, guys, is honestly, you don't need butter, but we're just gonna do butter because we gotta get rid of it. The great thing about beef in general, especially any type of beef that has fat in it. Yeah. Check the veggies. Oh yeah, the seal's probably actually working. Oh, there we go. It's spinning. Hey, it's kind of fun. It's still going. Holy crap. All right, so we're gonna hear a sizzle. Hear the sizzle? Hell yeah. There we go. All right, we're just gonna do 2 today, just because. That's fine. All right, ground beef. All right, with ground beef specifically, guys, if you guys don't know how to cook ground beef, it's a pretty simple one. You can mash it up beforehand if you want. The great thing about the Cookware is I'll usually just take ground beef that's been, again, thawed out. I'll just kind of separate it a little bit. Whoever wants to do a separate timer for me, do a separate timer for 7.5 minutes for me. Veggie timer on? Great. That skillet lid go, there it is. All right, with the ground beef, guys, I just put the lid on directly after the fact. It's like this pan is hot and then it stops cooking. It's actually so funny. I think I'm just gonna naturally just slowly but surely raise the temperature up of this thing. I promise this is not normally how it happens. I promise, guys. Just have to take my word for it. All right, a couple other things on the handout, okay? Number 3. Couple things that you always want to remind your customers of, which is medium to low is all you need to know. And always preheat your pans. All right, medium to low is all you need to know, Mrs. Jones, and preheat your pans. All right, there we go. We are done with those bad boys. Okay. Now, we probably overdid it on the vegetables, but when you're cooking for 25 minutes, it happens. But they are very nice and green, and very nice and orange, which is kind of fun. All right, we're just turn this one off. Now, who here knows about the lid notice? Is there any about the lid notice? Okay, if I were to keep this pan on and just like if I were to just put that lid on right now without any heat, what's gonna happen to the lid? That was great. Wow, that was great, guys. Holy cow. Right, so what I tell my customers, I always mention the lid notice because a lot of people don't mention the lid notice, and then you get a call on Thanksgiving from a customer like, I can't get the mashed potatoes out of the thing. Oh my God. So anytime you're done, Mrs. Jones, what I recommend is when you're done with the cocoa pots and pans, just let it peak. All right, that's all you got to do. Just give it room to breathe is what I tell my customers. If you give it room to breathe, you're going to be in perfect shape. How the lid gets stuck is the vapor seal, the moisture, just essentially just creates a lock. Right, so how you unlock it, who here knows how to unlock it? Okay, so for those of you that don't know what the heck you need to do, all you need is heat. So what I recommend is if this ever happens, right, specifically on the stovetop, if you put, like you're making tacos with ground beef and then all of a sudden it just like suctions, yep, and then you panic, you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, never gonna get it out. All you need to do is put that pan onto the stovetop again, turn it on the lowest heat you could possibly go on, and let it sit for 5 to 7 minutes, it'll pop right off. Super easy. Now, if you did this, and you did it on your countertop. Done that, that's fun. And then it just sticks there, and then people panic, and then they're like trying to rip it off. All you need to do with that is take a long lighter and just work it around the pan super slowly for about 2 to 3 minutes. And it will usually release just enough for you to be able to pull it off. Now, if you did that onto an induction stovetop, shout out to Cutco Corporate, whenever that happened, you guys probably got that email when they literally broke their induction stovetop. Crazy, and they just like, I think they just like replaced the freaking induction stovetop. I'm like, oh my God. If that happens, work around it longer because you want to just pull off of it. You want it to release if it's directly on an induction stovetop because I'm pretty sure those are glass. Yeah, JPB.
Okay, the atoms and the molecules in the metal will kind of move more quickly and expand with heat. And then when it gets cold, they'll move less quickly, less kinetic energy, more kinetic energy, and contract. When it contracts, because it's a vapor lock, vapor that we have, it will lock on. And then we put it on heat, like Bruce was saying, it'll move more quickly, and then it will expand and it will come off.
Science! That's exactly how it is. All right, so this is, again, not really perfect, but these actually kind of turned out just fine, actually, which is kind of insane. Cookware is the best. All right, there we go, we're dialed in. All right, there's your over easy eggs, guys. Nothing stuck, crazy, holy cow. That actually worked out. Didn't think that one was gonna work out, to be honest. Okay, a couple more things, and then we'll open this up to Q&A, okay? Using the cleaver, okay, against the griddle. This isn't obviously the example because this isn't a cleaver and this isn't a griddle. But what I do is I tell my customers a couple things. This is a really good line that I use. When I'm going into price positioning, I say, Mrs. Jones, Cookware pots and pans are the most expensive thing we make for good reason, right? They're the most expensive thing we make because our health is priceless. There's also a ton of metal, right? So, Mrs. Jones, this is a $250 knife. This is a cleaver. This is the cleaver, not the 7-inch Santoku. This is a $250 knife. You can kind of imagine how expensive the pots and pans are. Now, I put it next to the griddle on purpose because they're now believing that the griddle is like $680 because the griddle is so much more surface area than the cleaver. Some people put it next to, we started doing this, by the way. I'm pretty sure, shout out to Mike Dowd. He was the one that said he started putting it next to the wok. That's great, but there's so much to the wok you can't see. What I love about the griddle is you can just hold the griddle up and be like, yeah, this is $250. You can imagine how expensive the pans are. They're like, Jesus, criminy, right? So they're super like, holy cow, they're super in, like, they're like, okay, I get it. They're gonna be super expensive. All right. Let's see if we can get these things to slide around for us today. Yeah, there they are, sliding around the pan. Not quite sliding around, but hey, we'll do it. So there's your over easy egg. Slides right out. Booyah. Voila. You do not have to clap, but you can clap if you want. Same thing, guys, right? That's the cleanup. Like a little bit of water, a little bit of soap, and like you're perfect. You're chilling. Okay. All right. Okay, so the Cookware pots and pans are the most expensive thing we sell for good reason because our health is priceless, right? The only thing that we're not guaranteed, Mrs. Jones, is tomorrow. And I don't know about you, right? But I buy really expensive groceries, right? And when I say I buy really expensive groceries, Mrs. Jones, I'm trying to buy the good stuff that actually feeds my body and gives me energy throughout the day. The problem is when we take high quality groceries and we put them into low quality pans, we're cooking out a lot of the stuff that we're trying to get from those high quality groceries. So we're just kind of in this cycle in America where we keep buying these crappy pans, but we're buying high quality groceries, but we're not getting all the stuff we want out of it. So then when we add our vegetables, we add salt, pepper, oil, butter to our vegetables simply because we want them to taste better. Ironically, if you just had better pots and pans like the Cookware pots and pans, your vegetables that you're already making that taste really good without extra stuff would just taste better by themselves in our pots and pans. And all of a sudden, customers relate to this by saying, yeah, I buy high quality groceries. I'm trying to buy good stuff, and you're right. So I love this question. Have you ever asked yourself, Mrs. Jones, why you boil or steam foods? Another question for you guys. Have you guys ever asked yourself why you boil or steam foods? Well, ironically, right, why we boil and steam foods is we boil and steam foods simply because it makes our food softer and it kind of makes it a little bit more enjoyable to eat. That's kind of it. That's the reason why we basically cook or boil and steam foods. The problem is when we boil and steam foods, a lot of the good stuff we're trying to get goes into the water, right? So you guys have probably heard this line earlier, right? The healthiest part of the kitchen, ironically, is the kitchen sink, right? Because all the good stuff just goes down the drain because nobody actually drinks the water, right? So it's great about our pots and pans, Mrs. Jones. I can take, in the 1 quart, 3 quart saucepan, I can take carrots, and I can take broccoli, when you were growing up, you probably had your mom use 2 or 3 different saucepans to do broccoli, carrots at the same time, because if you put broccoli and carrots in the same pan normally, it would just taste like crockly, right? Like this vegetable medley that would just taste disgusting. So what's great about our pots and pans is I can rinse off my broccoli, I can rinse off my carrots, I can put those in the same pan. About 8 to 12 minutes later, on medium to low heat, I'll take the lid off. Both the carrots are cooked, the broccoli is cooked, they're both fork tender and delicious, and none of the flavors mix. And it's just because, Mrs. Jones, our pans are literally cooking like an oven. Who here has ever heard of an Instapot, right? And every single customer is like, oh my God, I love my Instapot. What's great about our complete set, Mrs. Jones, is when you get our complete set, you literally just get 9 Instapots. But you just don't have to plug them in. That's it. They're like, oh, that's it? Yeah, so for example, I take our Dutch oven. I'm like, yeah, for example, Mrs. Jones, our Dutch oven, you can do like an 8 to 12 pound chuck roast in this pan, right? Preheat it, sear each side for 2 minutes, put your bone broth in, any vegetables you want, put the lid on, and then just don't peek. After about 30 to 35 minutes, I'll take my meat thermometer, I'll pop it in, right? See how it does, see what the temperature's at, because some people like theirs well done, some people like a medium rare, whatever. And then I take my lid off after whatever, 45 to 50 minutes, and I've got a perfectly cooked chuck roast, and I don't even have to put the oven on. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, because it's like an Instapot. They're like, geez, Louise, that's pretty cool. All right, what are we at on that timer? Timer went off. So if you were to come and take a peek at this, essentially our ground beef, no more pink. So this ground beef is done, which is kind of nuts, kind of crazy. What was that, 7.5 minutes is what the timer was at? So from preheat to stop, what did that take us? 9 minutes? Oh, that's totally gonna stick. All right, so I'm gonna plate this, guys. And same thing, I'm gonna put all the bacon grease or all the fat of this, and you're gonna see the bottom of this pan. This is gonna be like an egg. This would actually be kind of delicious. Eggs and ground beef. That's it. Nothing stuck. Right? Okay. All right. Last thing I want to mention. The price comparison, and we'll open this up for some Q&A, okay? And I'll give you a couple more one-liners. The difference between Salad Master, guys, and All-Clad, specifically Salad Master, right, is that, and I literally use this exact line, which is the difference between Salad Master and Cutco is Salad Master only makes pans, and that's how they keep the lights on. Right, their sales reps make full commission on the pans because as Cutco sales reps, we sell knives, flatware, amongst other things. With the cookware, we actually get a reduced commission. So just because I get paid less, you as the customer benefit and actually pay a little bit less for our product that's actually guaranteed forever, not just the lifetime of the owner like our competitors, right? And then I show them the price of our complete set, which our price of our complete set, I believe still, even compared to not the biggest set of Salad Master, I don't even really compare against the biggest set because they have bakeware, right? So it's not really a fair comparison. There's the 6250. I believe at the price increase, we're sitting at like $6,080 or something, right? So we're still less than them for something that's guaranteed forever, not just for your life, but also for your customers, right? And that's also for, again, the full set that's technically now bigger than this because we have a forecourt, right? So using this line to set expectations before you start talking about the price increase, or not price increase, excuse me, the price of the Cutco Complete Set is really important because you're setting that customer's expectations to understanding why we're super expensive, but you're also conditioning them the pans can cost $10,000, right? I had a customer at the Minnesota State Fair this year where I did the whole demo, did the whole pitch, and I got down to the end, I did the price comparison, I show them to them on the legacy set, and they're like, oh, it's not that bad. And it was $5,800. It was technically $5,400 or $5,500 because this was before the forecourt happened. They're like, oh, I was expecting $10,000. I'm like, did my job, right? Because I conditioned them to understanding that, again, the cleaver example against the griddle, right? They're like, Jesus, the griddle's like $700, right? So everything is intentional, right? But specifically your job with your customers is how can you show videos, how can you show examples of things burning, how you can make an egg without it sticking. And then a couple of the other videos that I like sharing, just so you guys know, Brian Carter also made another fantastic video on chicken specifically. So he does chicken. So this would be a great recipe for you to do. He does chicken. He marinates the chicken with no extra butter, just marinates the chicken, sears it for whatever, 2 or 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Yeah. Then he flips it. Ooh, horizontal, good idea. Screen lock, baby. Twist. Oh God. Airdrop it. Yeah, should I just airdrop it to 70 people in here right now? I can't do that. I've overcommitted. All right, so again, he preheats the pan. It's a great visual too with the preheating, right? The water's just sitting there dancing, just chilling, dancing on the pan, right? It's fantastic. Right, another really important thing when you show videos, turn your sound all the way up. They should be able to hear the sizzle, right, of the butter or the steak, the chicken, whatever they're doing, right? He flips the chicken. Once he flips the chicken, I'm like, the cool thing is, this, Mrs. Jones, have you ever used cast iron? And they're like, oh yeah, my husband loves cast iron. The cool thing about these, Mrs. Jones, these are called proper fry pans. So they're actually designed to go right from your stovetop directly into your oven, right? So for example, my buddy here, he takes his chicken, sears them on each side for whatever, 5 to 6 minutes, and then he just puts them right in the oven and bakes the rest for about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on your chicken, right? In just a 400-degree heat, right? So like all of a sudden, I'm just like, okay, cool. So I tell my customers this: if you love cast iron's great, right? It just takes forever, by the way, to preheat properly. It is crazy how long cast iron takes. It is hard to beat a cast iron sear. It just is, right? Because cast iron is like designed for that specific purpose. What I love about the Cutco pots and pans is they're extremely easy to use, they're easy to clean, and they're built like an absolute tank. So you can get in and out of your kitchen faster and eat the food that you want, right? And make it taste even better than it already tastes. Take the food you're already cooking, just tastes better than our stuff by doing nothing different, right? So with that, I will open it up to some questions. Bang, 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 bang. All right, let's go, Quentin.
I have the mic right
Yeah, perfect. It's all good.
Hey, Bert, great demo. Is this working?
Just hold that button.
Hey, Bert.
Hold the button. It should turn on.
It was on.
It is on.
Hey, Bert.
Hey, Bert.
Great demonstration.
Any clue? It's if you could use the mic, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
I'm trying.
Otherwise, just use.
I can
Yeah.
I can repeat it. What's your question, Brandon? I'll just repeat it.
Just speak. up.
Yeah, all right. So great demonstration. I was really cooking, especially having never used that.
Seriously, thank you.
Again, it was very. I was like in awe of it. Like, man, he's really crushing it up there. So great job. But quick question. I think I'd love to hear your response to the question that everybody gets. I have my answers for it, but I'd love to hear yours. Hey, so is this nonstick?
Absolutely, Mrs. Jones. So this actually acts like a nonstick pan, but it acts like a nonstick pan without any of the toxic chemical coatings. So his question was, like, does this act as a nonstick pan? So this is like a nonstick pan without any of the toxic chemical coatings on them, right? Have you ever cooked with stainless steel, right? And then their question is, their answer is always, well, yeah. I'm like, what usually happens? Like, everything sticks. I'm like, can I show you how this doesn't stick? And then I go from there. Let's go. Q is first. So Q, just shout your question out. It's okay. Yeah, and I'll just repeat the question.
Okay, I have two questions. One, I'm getting a lot of people who own Hexclad, so just
Great.
responses to that. And
For sure.
Two, I've only ever used butter in the pans, but like, is there anything different that you do with like sprays?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll answer the first question first, because who here has ever heard of Hexclad? Okay, so Hexclad's actually been around longer than you guys think. So Hexclad's gotten a big wave because not Dave Ramsey, Gordon Ramsay. Get free, Hexclad! So Gordon Ramsay backed it, right? At the end of the day, Gordon Ramsay he's a human being that gets paid by Hexclad to promote their product, right? Ironically, what does Gordon Ramsay use in his actual kitchen on his cooking shows? Stainless steel, right? So I've had the biggest problem that I've found with Hexclad, and I just have had personal experience of customers that have already had this experience, so there's two problems with Hexclad. Hexclad is a high-quality version of a nonstick pan. Okay, it's a high-quality version of a nonstick pan. They guarantee it forever, or they guarantee it forever, excuse me. They guarantee it for the lifetime, but guess what is not covered under the lifetime guarantee? Scratches and flaking. So it's like, what are we doing, right? It's lifetime guarantee on defects of the product. That is not a defect, by the way. Things scratching and burning, right? Or things scratching and flaking, right? That is not a defect. That is just normal wear and tear on a pan. So what I tell my customers is that. I'm like, hey, here's the deal, Mrs. Jones, Hexclad, it's all the rave right now, and I totally understand it. Just so you know, Mrs. Jones, Hexclad's actually been around for like 10 years, and I've had customers that bought Hexclad before it got super crazy big with Gordon Ramsay, who bought it, were super pumped about it, loved it for a year, and then after about 1.5 to 2 years, it started doing the exact same thing that their low-quality nonstick pans already did, which was flake. right? And as we all know, once it starts to flake, you should probably throw it away, right? So I've just found a lot of customers, they spent $900 on a set, and they're just in the same situation that they were before they bought the HexClad. And then they end up buying the Cookware pots and pans. They're like, oh, I just wish I would have bought the Cookware pots and pans first, right? Because these are actually forever. If you break it, warp it, chip it, crack it, wear it out, send it in, they send you a new one, right? Second question was sprays. I don't use sprays. I know some people do use PAM, but in my demonstration, I actually talk about it. I'm all about health. I'm all about being aware of what you're putting in your body. So I'm like, here's the deal, Mrs. Jones, like, if you go buy good butter, you be intentional about where you're sourcing your butter from, right? I think butter is the best thing for us, again, in moderation, right? If you look at a PAM spray, it's like, I can't pronounce half of the ingredients that are in a PAM spray. And if I can't pronounce it, I don't know if it should really be going in my body. Now, it's hard to prevent that, right? But if I'm in control of what goes into my body when I'm in my house, harder to do that when I'm outside of my house. So I've had customers tell me that things usually have a tendency to burn more often with sprays. So I'm all about just talking about use butter, Mrs. Jones, good butter. So that's my experience with sprays. Marissa and then Roger. Marissa.
So I have two questions, and the only reason I even came here. So I've never cooked on an induction top. I'm very familiar with gas and electric. So how would I answer questions with that? Like, how does it work on like do the water test? Like that's all I know right now. So
Yeah.
I'd love some details just to be able to help those customers. And then two, like how I was vegetarian for many years, so I've cooked with this stuff and I love it, but I do not know how to teach people on meat, and I know I'll probably say that I'm exploring new nutrition.
Yes, let's go, Marissa.
I'm scared to cook with it because I've never made chicken by myself on this. So, like, can you give me a guideline, or is there
Chicken's
something
easy.
in the cookbook of how long to cook stuff?
It actually is.
I don't know what. Okay, so it is.
It is.
Okay, so I need to read it.
Yes. Who here has actually read the Cookware guide? Wow, not enough of you. All of you should read it.
Okay, so just go through that and actually.
100%. It actually has,
Visual and auditory, and I hate that, but I like watching this. So
yep, do that. Super important to do that, absolutely. So I learned, I didn't even realize, like, I mean, Stevie P, you probably have something to do with this, but it's like there's pan roasting, there's pan frying, there's all different sorts of cooking that you can do with Cookware pots and pans, and it teaches our customers how to do those different types of cooking, but then it also talks about certain types of meats and how long they should cook them. Now, getting back to the induction question, to be honest, I am more uninformed on induction than I feel like I ever have been until right now. Okay? I will be completely... correct. Now, also, I'm pretty sure, and who here cooks with induction at home? I'm curious. Does anybody? Okay, do you know, does it tell you a medium, high, low setting, or is it just a temperature gauge? Great. Okay, that's what I'm pretty sure most of this. This gave me 200 degrees to 420 degrees. Right, so I was kind of guessing that 420 degrees was probably going to be really high. So I was cooking most of this stuff, by the way, at about 240 to 260 degrees. Right, that's kind of where I was cooking at. So specifically induction acts like a gas stovetop, where it's super consistent and it's direct heat. Right, and like electric is a little bit slower than both gas and induction because it turns on and then it turns off, then it turns on and then it turns off. Right, so there's heat, but it's not constant heat like gas is in induction. Does that help? Yeah, so still medium to low. Again, for them, it's just like, hey. No, yeah, that's great. That's perfect. Yeah, and then as far as chicken goes, the guide with chicken specifically, like, depends on the size of the chicken breast. I have not started using a meat thermometer until like the last year of my life. Meat thermometers are the best thing ever. So specifically, it's like, hey, Mrs. Jones, if you want your steak medium well, medium, or medium rare, just take a meat thermometer. After about 6-7 minutes on a steak, put it in there. If it's 100, you can Google that. Super easy. Yep. Roger, you're next.
So my question is, like, what are pain points that you use to like help customers, choose to invest in the stainless cookware? And then my second question is, why should like clients buy Cutco rather than like Salad Master or Kitchen Craft? Because I had a customer that they basically bought like a fan set, Ultimate Homemaker, and I told them about the cookware. They're like, yeah, but we're gonna go buy our cookware from Kitchen Craft. And I was like, what?
Sure.
So I'd be curious to see and hear like how you would.
I mean, you've got a personal example of what's happened to Kitchen Craft over the last like 5-6 years at the State Fair of Texas, right?
Yeah.
Diminishing presence of Kitchen Craft and Salad Master, right? Specifically, Salad Master still has a huge booth. So to get to your second question first, I think what's really important is like the line that I use is like, if there's a horse to bet on in another 50 years, it's Cutco, because we don't have all of our eggs in one basket. Because we specialize in knives, flatware, cookware, accessories, and helping businesses brand their business. Like if there's a horse to bet on in another 50 to 100 years that you can actually pass this down to, it's Cutco. The other thing that I love using is, I kind of joke the difference between Salad Master and Kitchen Craft is they've got knobs, but knobs break. Right? So there's a lot of people that I know that have Salad Master or Kitchen Craft, but they've never sent their stuff in because they're just like, yeah, I've got some handles that are broken, all my knobs are broken, I just haven't gotten around to sending them in. They still work fine, but just the knobs don't work. I'm like, the great thing is Cutco doesn't have knobs because they just don't break. Right? So just really, really selling the idea of simplicity. Now, technically, the second question, or the first question, is like some pain points. That's a loaded question. And I feel like I painted on a couple of them. Again, like, these have the same benefit of a nonstick without any of the toxic chemical coatings. That's actually a pain point in and of itself. It's like, whoa, what do you mean toxic chemical coatings? All right, and then you explain, hey, like at the end of the day, PFOAs, you explain a little bit about that. That's another good one. Some other pain points that I use within Cutco pots and pans, specifically, it's like painting the picture of cleaning. I talk a lot about cleaning, how frustrating it is to clean, how a lot of pans are not dishwasher safe. Cutco can be put in the dishwasher. I also talk about, again, consistently reminding them of the constant repurchasing of pans. Just so you guys know, the pan market is 10x the knife market in the US. So every $1 billion of knives that are sold in the US every year, $10 billion of pans are sold, which puts into perspective. But it also, if you think about this, it's actually very true, because most people stick with knives forever, but they go through pans every 2 to 3 years because they know deep down it shouldn't be flaking. So then they end up just replacing them every 2 to 3 years, even though they just go to the new thing. They just don't know enough about it. So hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious if you have a good reason for the steamer and what you would tell customers when they're like, well, I don't need a steamer.
100%.
What am I supposed to do with that if I can just cook it?
Absolutely. That's a really good question. I can do a little bit of names and uses too if you want. But Josh Mueller did a really, really good video that if Eileen, if you remind me, I'm pretty sure I could find the Dropbox video of that, of Josh Mueller going over some names and uses for the whole entire cookware set. Steamer's really easy. Steamer's really great. I'm not really selling the steamer unit for the health aspect because you don't really technically need a steamer unit for, again, vegetables technically, because you can do that with a 3-quart or a 4-quart or a 2-quart. So I use beer brats. I talk about beer brats. I'm like, yeah, Ms. Jones, if you like beer brats, put beer at the bottom, put your brats in the basket, and you get steamed beer brats, really delicious. Also bao buns, steamed bao buns, yeah. So I'll show one quick example of this. This is an example, by the way, from Luke Mills, I think, so you guys can bug him for it. But he has the steamer unit with some bao buns. They're just steam buns, right? And then he just has a little video of the buns sitting in there. Now, next question. I know you guys are in a lot of, unfortunately, we're out of time. So if you guys want to come ask more questions about cookware, I'm going to be at the roundtables. I totally lost my train of thought. So that's what I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for your time, your attention, your questions.